Hello and welcome to the preview show edition of the Blue Monday podcast, a 3 times weekly show looking into all things Ipswich Town. I'm your host, Richard Woodward, and I'm delighted to welcome back the brilliant Harry from Bath. Harry, how's it going?
All good at this end, Rich. I have to say it's been a great week, and I have to say it's an unmitigated joy. It doesn't happen very often, but to be able to go and watch Ipswich Town play and arrive home 45 minutes later, it's no idea. We obviously everybody knows we were at Ashton Gate this week. It was wonderful going. I sat with the magnificent Mr. Bloom, and we ringside seats up. Well, not ringside. We were up in the gods, but over halfway. So I was able to see the Southwest Brigade over to our left with our flag out, and they were. We'll come on and talk about it, but the crowd. Bristol fans, yet again, like we saw at Wigan at West Brom, turning on their own team, the likes of Ipswich, and our fans, particularly in the second half, they were singing. It was Paul Lambert is a Blue, Ipswich Till I Die, all the numbers, and you could hear them loud and clear from where we were at halfway. It was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, great. It was a great evening.
And on the telly as well. Yeah, we'll definitely come back to that.
We'll come back to that.
Speaking of being at home in 45 minutes, that was my pleasure and privilege on Saturday against West Brom. Although I stopped off for a curry in Birmingham with a few people, with our mate Daryl, who was also your travelling partner in the week as well.
Yeah, that's right. It was him. I mean, Graham from the Naked Footy show. It was great. It was royalty. I was able to take them up to the Bear pub, which isn't the most exciting, but it's our local. And I got him to meet. He met my great Italian mate Vince, and many insightful tactical discussion was had. Needless to say, and then we headed over to the game. It was a great pre-match session. It was really
Daryl's
good.
put the miles in this week.
He really has.
Let's do 30 seconds on West Brom, because obviously we dealt with it on the flagship show. What I need to quickly say is, and I didn't mention this on the flagship either, is I bought my own ticket for West Brom on Saturday, just randomly. I left it probably a little bit too late, but got there before they sold out. And I rock up on Saturday, take my seat, and 5 minutes later, who should turn up but our good mate Mullet? And behind me is his dad. I was thinking, what are the odds of buying a random set of tickets and happening to be sat next to someone you know? If anyone tweet in if that's ever happened to you, it was allocated seating obviously because we sold out. But so yeah, it was. I had 2 friends on Saturday, which it might have been just randos otherwise.
Yeah, I'm going to flatter the guy. He's going to be furious with me for saying it on the show, but I love watching games with Mullet. It's an absolute joy. Interesting insights, conversations all the way through the game. He picks up on so many details. So that was a bonus, an absolute bonus.
Absolutely was. And Mullet Senior as well, who's able to put things in so much context, having, he's a man of great experience, is I think a polite way of putting it. So yeah, good insights there. And Saturday, I thought we were, first half, they had chances, and if they take those chances, maybe it's a different game. But second half, we were great, and we've talked about this before, how these pairings, these bonds that you call it, they are starting to be forged now. And Judge, Nolan, Scouse, I think, came on Saturday and also came on Tuesday. He's complementing that. Bishop, Chalobah, this midfield kind of, it's about 4 or 5 midfield players we've got now who know how to play with each other. That's the wrong phrase, isn't it? But know where each other are, know where to make positions, and they're all floating around as well. Actually, they're not taking rigid positions, are they? There's a lot of movement there, and I think it's starting to bear fruit. And yes, we're not winning those games, and for a proper striker in that team, I think we would have won on Saturday if we had, and maybe Tuesday as well.
Yeah, we would have.
Thoughts on that, and thoughts on we saw certainly that on Tuesday. More of a makeshift, or I think the questions allude to this, a experimental lineup with maybe next season in mind. Josh Emmanuel back in the team for the first time this season. Andre Dezelle back in the team. El Mazouni on the bench, who made his debut off the bench. Jackson back in as well. Your thoughts on West Brom into Bristol and this kind of pattern of play that's starting to emerge?
Well, what you just talked about, in a way, we both saw the same game. In terms of, we certainly saw the same team and the same pattern of the game as well, both in terms of what was happening on the field and then the crowd turning on their own sides. It's fascinating, that it really is. The players you name checked, actually, Josh Emmanuel, Andre Dezelle, were 2 of the ones who really caught my eye. where to start? I'll run through what we saw, because I think we all watched it on television. The parallels are so similar. What you said again about the lack of a striker. The first half was oh so typical, not making our dominance count, and then being undone by opponents as they grew into the half. I would criticise one small thing, and it's not a howler, but we didn't pressurise the person putting in the cross. I think it was Eliasson put the cross in for their goal, and that was I felt we could have maybe. I think it was just that they'd been coming on to us. The pattern had changed, and you could see the pendulum swinging out. I don't know whether it was a moment of weariness, but
it was the short corner, wasn't it, where the goal
came was,
from? So there was maybe a little bit of a pause there because of that.
I think, as indeed did they switch off for our short corner, which got us our equaliser. But I was worried at half-time. I thought, here we go, it's going to be another 2-0 defeat. We've seen the pattern before. However, there's one other small point I'd make, which is I was worried about this. I was chatting to Ben about this, actually, in the second half we were watching the game. I was worried, is there an issue around Lambert's defensive coaching? Is it because we seem to be more inherently risky at the back under Lambert than we were under Mick? When Mick came in, it was kind of nail the struts into the back four, no question at all. But actually, I just think it's not necessarily that Lambert isn't as strong a defensive coach as Mick. I think the problem is you get stronger defensive football under Mick, but it comes at a very heavy price.
Your fullbacks are fullbacks; they don't bomb on. So Emmanuel and Kennock were in the opposition's half, weren't they?
Exactly that. I think you've just got to accept the fact that the nature of this football will be inherently more risky. It may yield up more goals conceded, but it will certainly yield up a hell of a lot more in terms of creativity and fluidity and what we're now starting to see blossom. You can see all the synapses linking up. It's fantastic. It really is. The first half, as I say, that's where we were. The second half, I have to be honest, that the game, it kind of lacked a certain level of quality, and that's me being diplomatic. I said to Ben at one stage, I said, this game is disintegrating. It's almost as if the game has given up. There was something going on at the touchline where they were kicking the ball and whose throw was it? And nobody knew. And it was really, the linesman had almost given up as well. It was really one of those weird moments where you just thought, oh God, what are we all doing here? But
that works for us though, doesn't it?
It does work.
Bristol at home team, their fans were getting frustrated at how they weren't taking the game to us.
And I think that was why the two were linked, because we started playing with personality. We were disrupting their play. We won so many, and they said that we won so many second balls. We won virtually all of them, and they couldn't get any sort of rhythm going.
Same on Saturday as well. And that's a real shift, actually, because a few weeks ago, particularly Reading, I think, but even earlier in the season, we had been talking about how we were losing those 50-50s, how the small percentages would go against us. And Saturday and Tuesday, we're making that happen now.
Yeah. We have the urgency, and also Bristol City were growing in nervousness. We were growing in confidence, and you could see the two going together. And and it wasn't even just for our goal, but there was Kelly on the Bristol forum. I put up the notes on Monday on TWTD. They described Lloyd Kelly as a high quality left back, which we all remember from Portman Road, but he always has a real rick in him. Now, they played Preston a couple of games before they played us, and he gave away a stupid free kick just before half time. Preston put the ball in, bang, 1-0. So Kelly was the one who was dug out for giving away the free kick in the first place. But he took that sense of a real rick in him to a whole new level. That was just one brilliant own goal. I loved it. It was an
I'm not sure I've seen one with that much power.
He just laced it. He really did. It was superb. His body shape was all haywire. It was great. Brilliant. He was a brilliantly drilled in cross by Kennock, and it was the right thing to do because it gave the keeper, who we knew was flaky.
Oh, he was iffy, wasn't he? Blimey.
Putting it in low as well meant that if he was going to use his feet, the ball again could have gone anywhere. It was a very well thought through cross. It really was.
Was I right in thinking that Lloyd Kelly, have they said that he's got a bit of a temper issue, or is he a bit hot-headed every now and then? Did they mention that, or have I made that up?
No, that is true. That is true. But the big problem with him is he can't get wound up. He can't get unsettled. And
because Guion Edwards, I think, was targeting him. Guion Edwards left one on him early second half, I think.
And
they had a bit of handbags.
Small advantages, exactly. And the other thing, they said that if he does make a mistake, his confidence can wobble for a bit. And the other thing we noticed then was that Josh Emmanuel, who I thought had a really good game, he came into the game more because Kelly seemed to start playing within himself. It was almost like he had this thing going around in his head that this error, this blunder that he couldn't shake off. And I would say just a bit like West Brom, if we were the more likely team to go on and win. We almost gave away that last minute goal as well.
Yeah. That's typical us as well. But,
yes, it is. No, it is. That's true.
Yeah, this kind of, the Reading game aside, it's a really solid unbeaten run.
Yeah.
We just need to convert these chances, don't we? I mean,
it's turning draws into wins. You see, I remember when Roy Hodgson took over, when Fulham were, it's a good few years ago, they were on their knees. And again, they didn't win something like the first 6 or 8, but then they were picking up a lot of draws. And then those draws then started turning into wins, and then they climbed out of danger. Our problem was, and we knew it was this problem in November, we were relegated then. We weren't being relegated now. That was when we hadn't got the opportunity to use a loan market. We couldn't bring in reinforcements quickly enough to be able to, to bring the whole process of rebuilding forward 8 weeks.
Yes. And you're bringing in players, as we've talked about as well, that are not playing for their current clubs either, who need time to get up to match fitness as well.
Yeah, and we'll come on to that with one of the Forest players later. Exactly. Okay. January signings are problematic. A couple of other things can I mention? A couple of players who caught the eye. Josh Emmanuel, I do want to say, I've never understood. We've been trying we've been bringing in left backs for all over the place. I don't know what's been going on in training. I'm a fan of Emmanuel. He gives us, and my Italian mate Vince said it as well. He gives us some much needed physicality at the back.
Yeah,
and he was fine. He did come under the cosh a little bit in the 20-minute spell that Bristol had before half time.
Little errors here and there, but he's only just come back into the team as well. You've got to give him that.
Yeah, so I was very happy to see him play. And Andre Dazelle, I think there's a question about him. The thing I spotted about him, now Bristol City don't have a heavyweight midfield. Let's say that that's their strength tends to be out wide. They don't. Vince or Ben said it actually.
Ben's on his review, yeah.
Yeah, and they don't have an out-and-out playmaker. But we were able to nullify them there. But the thing that Dozell was able to do was find the incisive forward pass. All good players in that area. Casey Palmer, when he was with Huddersfield, did it as well. He's not doing it at Bristol. He would always look for an incisive forward pass. Dozell's instinct. It may not be a Hollywood pass, but it could be a killer 5-yard
It's that one that people didn't see coming. There's a run that someone has anticipated, that he's anticipated, and he threads it through.
Yeah. He knows what the space is going to be, and he's going to play it into that. Keep an eye out for that. He did it several times in the game. You could see he was getting. It's not a showy radar, but it is a radar, and it's worth spotting. So that was really good. A few comments about Judge. People felt he was quiet. I felt he was more peripheral in a wider role. And for me, anyway, I always feel he has to play centrally or have a totally free role. He's just somebody who can, Vince would say, trequartista, somebody playing in behind who can work off a striker or who can overload a particular flank if he sees an opportunity. But and it was obviously planned because occasionally he'd be caught in field and one of the midfielders would swing out to protect Kenlock out on the left, which was good. And the other player I'll mention, and though it's two players, Mizuni was undaunted when he came on. He played really well. And Chalobah was fantastic.
Man of the match, Chalobah, yeah.
Yeah, he really was. But I do think as well, I know there's a question about Skuse, and I think Skuse does have a role. Against a lightweight city midfield, Chalobah was fine. He was able to, there wasn't the aggression that you'd get from Sheffield United, say. But bringing Skuse on for that last 15 minutes was just perfect. Okay, let's just I don't know if it was the same at West Brom. Bring on a steel girder, just put it in there, just to tighten it up for that last 15 minutes when the younger players' concentration might start to wobble.
Yep. Absolutely agree with all of that. Yeah, really good stuff. I thought Chalobah was excellent, and he's really growing into the season. And I guess there's a bit of smugness. I think we can rewind to some early pods where I think the majority of us, well, certainly us two on this show, is saying there's a player there. You will get him making mistakes and you will get him trying stuff, but I think he's figured that stuff out now. Those errors that we saw him turning into trouble or trying the Hollywood pass, as you call it, he doesn't do that anymore. And he's actually quite physical in midfield. He's doing a lot of what Skuse does, but probably a little bit more mobile, and you get a little bit more of an attacking complement as well, maybe.
Yeah, you do. You get that little extra half dimension with him that you possibly don't get with Skuse.
And he'll move further forward perhaps as well than Skuse usually fancies, though. Skuse has done that more this season. Just one thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on. We haven't prepared for this, so feel free to bat this one away very quickly. Streaky Lee. The thought you were sat in the home and what's the thoughts on is the crowd again turning on him, or was it kind of one of those ones, because it's not a good run? Is it 4 without win, 5?
I think it's 5 now, 1 draw out of 5, and four of them were league games. It's interesting because this leads on actually nicely to, well, I was going to talk about Bristol City, and my Italian friend Vince, who I've known him for years, he follows Ipswich as a friendly outsider, as it were, but Italians see things differently. And we talked about this in the car on the way home. We talked about Ipswich and we talked about Bristol City. Let's do Ipswich first, and then we'll do Bristol City just to wrap up the game.
I feel like we need an intro for Vince, but
yeah,
never
Vince
mind.
is really good.
Some Italian music or something.
So Aida or whatever. No, but he does see things tactically, and he did. I remember he came to the 2-1 defeat in McCarthy's first season, and I was really worried that we were going to go down. And Vince said no. He could see already that McCarthy was already putting the struts in place at the back. We went later in that March on a 5 or 6 game run where we didn't concede a single goal, and we obviously stayed up. But Vince also saw the Lincoln game on television. We watched that together. Getting an Italian's take on watching Matt Reid is really funny. I should point that the Italians have this "my body is a temple" approach. Everything
yes.
is, and there was Matt Reid who was giving us all hope as he was. Vince calls it calcio inglese, as it were. This guy just sort of going around, literally lambing into Christoph Ferrer all evening and getting it back again. But it's great to get his take, and he really felt the contrast between McCarthy's football and Lambert's was fascinating from his point of view. He said a very neat performance, and you could see Lambert's personality reflecting in our style of play. And he also just drew a distinction between what he called the connected football of Lambert and the departmental football of McCarthy, is how he described it. Sure. In McCarthy, you had defenders, you had midfielders, you had attackers,
yes.
and there was all
they
very
have their
different
zones, and
that's it. Whereas there's a greater fluidity with Lambert, and there's more of those kind of bonds that we talked about. There's more of them happening on the field because it's much more joined up football. And Vince was convinced that if we had last season's firepower, this team would have finished mid-table. His take on where we go from here, he said it is very much the Sheffield United model, building a team with good foundations, a defined style of play, stable management. Give it time. He said, even if it doesn't happen in the first season, he says what you cannot do is panic. He says League One is a treacherous league. He knows this. He's got a few Bristol Rovers friends as well, and they talk about that. It can be a bit of a minefield, but it's not daunting. He said you should have enough to get out of it, spin back up again from what he saw. But he said it may take a little bit of time, but he said give Lambert time because he could see an identity which was very much reflecting Lambert's personality coming through. So it's quite good. But on the subject of Bristol, oh my God, right. Well, first comment I would make is if that was Elland Road in the same circumstances, it would have been a cauldron.
Yeah, as in a bad cauldron.
Oh yeah, for us, they'd have made it horrible.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No.
So the atmosphere would have been quite fearsome before kickoff.
Yeah, before the game, the place would have been absolutely rocking. Yeah. We're going for a playoff place. We're going to make this horrible for Ipswich. We're going to turn them over, and you're going to know about it. This was like a League Cup first round replay. The ground wasn't full. Right. There was one corner that was quite noisy. They were sitting back. It was like a rugby crowd almost. No disrespect to rugby crowds, but it wasn't tribal in any sense at all. And Vince's comments, going back to the Streaky Lee thing, I think the issue is it's a lack of leadership on the field. They're such a confidence team. I was watching the way they were playing, there was no one leading. We had Chambers out there, bless him. He wasn't okay. Few wayward balls played, but he had the whole thing organised. Judge at the other end of the field they were kind of they both knew what they were doing. For all of the money they'd spent, Gigi's a quiet striker, Patterson is a quiet. They all they all doing their little bit of the garden, but nobody's looking at the garden in
Webster's
overall.
not a talker, is he?
No, he's not. Vince was actually slightly critical of Webster. He said he loves the ball, but he might love the ball a bit too much. And it could have been the nature of the game because of their lack of a good flowing midfield. He felt he was very slow with his movement, and he said that could be his problem if he goes up a level, that he doesn't seem to have that urgency. He's an instinctive passer, but he just felt he was a player who loved the ball a bit too much. But Vince's most damning comment, he said, pretentious players with a pretentious manager in a pretentious stadium.
Wow.
That's how he put
it.
And he didn't have to think that out. That just came out naturally from him.
Imagine that in an Italian accent, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. He's he was absolutely damning of Bristol City. He just couldn't believe. He says, how they. He says, my good God. He always says that. He says, how on earth they are where they are. He says, what's going on in the championship? Does nobody want sixth place? Which we'll come on to.
Indeed.
Yeah, but so there we go. So no, good evening all around. As I say, lots to be optimistic about, and obviously it's great that, and it wasn't just in one game because we saw it in 2 games, which
absolutely
is great.
Right. Excellent stuff. Well, ciao, Vince.
And ciao, Vince.
Thank you for that. That was interesting stuff. Let's move on to another team that is trying to put a run together to go into those playoff places. Nottingham Forest. There's a lot to talk about here. We'll do our usual kind of dive through the team and figure stuff out, but a bit of change since our 2-0 defeat, and we had a quick chat before we started recording, and my view was that the 2-0 defeat 1st of December, I think it was probably our lowest ebb, or certainly the most one-sided defeat that we've seen under Lambert. Grabbing with 2 goals there, but it could have been a lot more. And since then, Karanka kind of asked to leave, didn't he? He asked to have his contract terminated. And I'm not sure the real reason behind that has come out ever since. And then you've kind of got this Forest kind of all-star management pairing that's gone in of Martin O'Neill and one Roy Keane, who will make his Portman Road return on Saturday as well. I'm sure he'll get a nice warm welcome. Where should we start here? Because I guess unsurprisingly, they're a little bit inconsistent form-wise. They had a bit of a thumping to Villa midweek, 3-1. But they beat Hull 3-0 last week, and then before that they lost 2-0 to Stoke. It's just a little bit inconsistent. The formation's a little bit over the place as well, a bit of rotation here and there. Is this season maybe a bit of a stretch in terms of the playoffs, or are they suddenly going to click into gear, Harry? What's your thoughts?
It's an interesting. It's a funny one. It's trying to piece this one together. Usually, like if it's Brentford, you know what the form of play. If it's Pulis, you know what you're getting. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of the tunnel on Saturday. It's the best way I could put it. Looking at the overview first, a couple of big teams. You say inconsistency. Every mid-table team is going to be inconsistent if you think about it. But there's an issue around a lack of quality. I'll mention it now. When we come on and look at the players, every so often I'm going to talk about the way that they were found out by Aston Villa on Wednesday night, and assume when I say that the quality is an issue there. Okay. It's because that's the difference between playoff hopefuls or playoff wannabes, as they call themselves, and Villa, who they described as playoff contenders. Okay. Wednesday, mathematically they're still in it. I think after us they play Swansea and Rotherham, I think. So in theory they're right in the playoffs.
Hashtag winnable games.
I didn't say it. Did I? I don't think I did. No. God, I tried not to. I've typed it, but Ben didn't see it. But no, the truth came crashing through the door on Wednesday night. The manner of the defeat has really managed their expectations. They realise they don't have it. One of them said that if they did go, he said the next 3 games will make us believe we have a real chance of making the playoffs. It's what would happen if we actually got to them that would worry me, and God forbid if we win them. And I think it's an echo of what Bristol City fans were saying. You think, oh, we'd love to get into the playoffs, and then you kind of go, oh my God, we could get into the playoffs.
Yes, we might play Derby and lose.
Oh God, they could play Leeds, who are licking their wounds after just missing out. It's really, it could be, they could get absolutely murdered there. So I don't know. It's they don't feel. One small side point I have to mention before I forget: there is a kind of "please don't sack Frank Lampard" line running up there. As far as they're concerned, from
they think he's been found out.
No, they love him there. They want him to stay. It's a side point. No, it is very much another version of Bristol City. Actually, still in the top 6 hunt. But do they really want to be there? Lack of consistency, the lack of quality and depth. Deep down, I know we're not good enough. And it's the thing that they know they can beat anyone in the league. It's like so many championship teams at that level, but they're incapable of doing it consistently. And they said if we don't learn from the Villa game, because we will come on and talk about, they will, if they don't learn from that, there's something seriously wrong.
Just Harry, a bit of context as well. Let's not forget that start of the season, big money takeover, big value signings. Carvalho, obviously the most notable of that. So is this a case of Wolves? Wolves obviously stormed the championship in the second season after a takeover. Yeah. Is the hope that this is a learning season? You get Martin O'Neill, I guess Karanka. Karanka never really felt like a fit for a team that wanted to play attacking football that is based around a player like Carvalho. But is there a view secretly between Forest fans that this season's about establishing the team and next season it will be the one where we're expecting to storm it? Or has that talk gone away completely?
Don't know. It's a good question.
Because it's the model they were going to follow, isn't it?
It was the model they were going to follow initially, and if they are, you'd question the owner's judgment. They're worried that the owner is trigger happy, That's one issue to say. That's a flashing light because of the way Karanka left. Many of them said the season died on Boxing Day, and all we're now doing is watching the death throes. That was one comment which came out. The problem is, if they're playing to Carvalho's style of play, if there's some sort of coherent plan, why would you bring in a manager like Martin O'Neill, who is primarily is British in his model of play? He's not, he's not going to be playing pretty elegant football. And we'll come on and talk about the fact that yet again you have a manager who's inherited a squad and will try to mold it into what he wants to do because what he's got doesn't fit what he would normally his normal method of play. There were some good signings in the January window, but they're again, like with us with Paul Lambert, they're quite remedial rather than necessarily strategic. They're bits of the jigsaw, but they're not the whole jigsaw. It's interesting. There is a disconnect in terms of the signings in the summer, the appointment of Karanka, who plays a very cagey style, and then O'Neill, who plays a third style altogether. None of it seems to. And when you look at that, you're finally think, are we in Stoke country here? If you know what I mean, where they need to, it needs a more fundamental rebuild than that. It's fascinating. It really is. Looking at O'Neill, let's talk about what you might see on Saturday. He has got a plan A of playing more direct. I've been trying to work it out from the last 3 games. They played 2 games ago. They played Stoke and they used a diamond. They played 4-3-3 against Hull, and then they played the Christmas tree 4-3-2-1 against Villa. So they play back 4, and they broadly like to have. They have their strength is their richness, if anything, is in midfield. They have got a lot of midfielders, so you might as well work with that. But it's then how you go and use them. So my assumption is that O'Neill will go with his plan A of trying to play a more direct type of game. But there is a plan B option, which is more passing football, and it's dependent on the players that we see. So if you see, for example, Darren Murphy leading the line, they're looking to go a little bit more direct. Against Hull 2 games ago when they won 3-0, Murphy went out, he worked the back line, he worked Hull's back line heavily. They were tired out. Then they brought on Karim Ansarifard, the Iranian, I should say, international, and Carvalho. They came on, and of course Hull, by then, they'd punched a few holes, they were tired, and then the technicians came on and unlocked them, and that worked. But Aston Villa, they started with Ansarifard and Carvalho playing alongside Lolly as a 3 up front in the Christmas tree with Ansarifard as the focal point. Aston Villa pressed the team, which in the midfield and in the defence, so Forest couldn't get out of their own third, which meant they ended up resorting to playing long balls to the technicians.
Yeah, exactly right. You're not going to win in the air. Carvalho is very diminutive, I think, is a nice polite way.
Ball on the ground. This is one of them says, why can't we pass the ball on the ground anymore? This was my fear when O'Neill came in. The squad isn't geared to play between the lines, and I don't get the change in direction. The players that they do have to play O'Neill's style, which is people like Watson in holding midfielder or Murphy up front, their best days are behind them, to be quite honest. So they said Villa stopped them playing. Too many players weren't able to do the basics right. They were giving the ball away under pressure. Dean Smith he absolutely mugged them. He knew exactly how to break them up. The midfield had no outball. They were easily pressed because they'd nowhere forward to play it to. They were just launching it up the field. The quality issue does play into this because against Hull, who were a team of inferior quality, they were able to control and dominate the game. The second they came up against a team who knew what they were about, Villa with Grealish in there and McGinn did a phenomenal job on callback, which we'll come on to. They suddenly found that they were overwhelmed and they couldn't handle it. Watch Villa. I think Villa are the team who are going to crash into the playoffs.
It's all about Grealish, Harry, isn't it? All about Grealish.
It is.
Where should we start? Because obviously we've spoken about a lot of the personnel previously. I think the goalkeeper position is pretty boring. It's Pantilimon, isn't it?
Yeah. Quick word on him. We start at the back and work our way up because there have been changes at the back which are worth mentioning. Less of a concern, I have to say, certainly in central defence. Pantilimon they think he's doing better under O'Neill. There was an issue around a lack of confidence. He's 6'8". He's an absolute unit. One of them described him fielding the ball. It was a bit like King Kong in swatting away the airplanes at the end of the film. He's so titanic. A couple of minor things: non-existent left foot, struggles with low shots. But he seems to be taking more advanced positions in the box, which is something because before he would sit back on the box and they couldn't understand why a 6'8" keeper would struggle on crosses. It just didn't make any sense at all. But there is a confidence issue, I think, which has affected the rest of the team, which is still there, but O'Neill seems to be working on it, and it seems to be dampening down, as it were. They are light in numbers at the moment at the back, and that is because they have a couple of their key defenders. Figueiredo is one; he's out injured, as also is Michael Dawson. They're both unavailable. But they really are struggling. It's often the way you get injuries in the areas where you're least capable of covering.
We know all about that up front.
Exactly that. So they've got in two guys who you won't have seen before, but they are one you may have seen. I don't think he's played remote before. There's Alexander Milosevic, Alexander the Great. That tells you what they think of him. And Johan Benayoun. They call them the Bruise Brothers. They're
the
proper centre halves.
The
Bruise Brothers. Yes, nice. Forgive us. Sorry.
It's really difficult to say, actually.
It is actually. It is. I just jotted it down. Right. Let's do Milosevic because he's okay. They're both proper defenders. That's what they are. That's what they do. Milosevic is Swedish, actually. He went to he played for AIK Solna, went to Besiktas in Turkey. It didn't work out. He came back to Sweden, and he joined in January. And so he is new to the English game, but he has clicked straight away. Calm but tough, hard without being dirty. The thing they always say about him is he's never out of position. He's really good at reading the game. Wins his headers, moves the ball simply. They think he's the more footballing of the two centre backs. He makes important interceptions and clears his lines, but he's not afraid to launch it. But that could be because of O'Neill.
Yes. Can we not knock it? Yep.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. He's been solid all game. However, he was bullied for the first time by Tammy Abraham. So if we have a Tammy Abraham caliber striker, we can do him. That's we say to everybody every week there is a weakness. Yet but don't expect us to do anything about it. But we can highlight it. He's good at nicking balls off strikers. He's no right to win. He's a really good technical, but also quite a physical defender. These two are also quite useful in the air. Which is something that, so pinging crosses in, I think it might be getting in on the ground might be the way. And Johan Benayoun, you will remember, Benayoun. Benayoun, thank you.
There's a U in there as well, isn't there?
This is going to be like
Benny
last week. Now, where's he come from? Tunisia international, 31, came from Leicester in January, and they think they may have had Leicester's trousers down on this signing. They think he's absolutely brilliant.
Is it a permanent, or is it? Are they both loans, or are they permanent?
No, both permanent signings.
Okay.
He's more all action than Milosevic, and at one stage he marauded forward with the ball and found himself on the left wing in one recent game. He does this, but he's more, as I say, they said he smashes everything away. He's that type of. He's more, as I say, all action. He's a big guy who can do the simple things of football well, like hit the ball and get in the way of the opposition. That's what you get.
You're
getting.
That's championship defending. Yep.
Yeah, they said he isn't really a footballer, but he's definitely a defender. Anything that needs heading or clearing, and he is there. So he's very good at. He is, and like Milosevic, he's good at reading the game. So he intercepts when the ball breaks. So they seem to have sorted the central defence out anyway, which is probably what you'd expect from O'Neill in any case. More interesting at fullback.
Yeah. So I'm looking at Derinkwa, is it, and Osborne?
Yeah. Yep. Well, Derinkwa and Osborne because Jack Robinson was suspended.
That's it. It's Jack Robinson, isn't it? Yeah.
Jack Robinson is the normal ex-QPR guy.
Let's look at he played first. On. Yeah. So I've got the team from the.
You're right.
Here as well.
Yeah. No, that's it. No, but so Robinson will be back because he had a 2-match suspension for yellow cards, which we will come on to. Derinkwa first. Hitting Hope Merchant is how they describe him. He's not a footballer. He's good defensively, and again, it's a bit like Mick actually with O'Neill. He's under the defenders. Most in the main are getting better at defending under him, and Derinkwa seems to have grown in confidence defending. They said he's improved. He's less of a liability at the back. His issue is on the going forward bit now because things are so flaky ahead of him. Like against Aston Villa, because of the midfield being pulled out of place, he was being confronted with a left back, a left winger, and Jack Grealish.
Oh, we've talked about the wingers, the fullbacks of Villa who bomb on as well, isn't it?
They do.
Was it Neil? Neil, what's his face? I've forgotten his name.
Oh, I've gone back.
Taylor? No.
Neil Taylor. Yes, it would have been Taylor actually against. I haven't looked at the Villa team actually in detail, but the point being that with the overwhelming. With the sense of overwhelming and with the Christmas tree formation, there wasn't anyone in front of him, so he was relying.
Yeah, it's quite narrow midfield.
He was relying on, I think, it was Ryan Yates to come across and cover him. But Ryan Yates had his fire extinguisher working on something else, so it was it basically you could see how they lost the game. But the criticism of Derinkwa is it's more his lack of footballing intelligence when he goes forward with the ball. He has a powerful running style. I wonder if it's the confidence. Which doesn't allow him to bully his way past players and along the touchline. He doesn't have that instinct. They talk about the fact that he'll get midway into the opposition half, and then one of them said he'll attempt to launch the ball into the box only to hit the first defender with no pressure on him, when there's nobody in the box to aim at, and he's got other options around him. Okay. So he's kind of, he gets up there, but he doesn't really have a brain to know what to do. But he puts in good tackles and runs his legs off. But as I say, if only he could cross, they said about
As always, there's always the fatal flaw.
Yeah. There is indeed. Jack Robinson has other flaws, which are worth mentioning, because this guy is the only left back, and when he's doing his job well, he sees and covers attacking runs brilliantly. He is defensively good, and he can push forward as well. But as one of them said, he isn't the brightest spark. He got a 2-game ban for 10 yellow cards.
Wow, already? That's decent.
Yeah. Exactly. They said he's a strange one. He can get wound up too easily, and he's got some silly bookings, but he does get targeted with some malicious challenges. So obviously everybody in the division, every player knows that. I think Norwich were one of them. One of their players, it wasn't Buendia. It was the fullback, whoever the right back was. Anyway, but it might have been Aaron's actually, or he does get targeted regularly.
Well, Quillen Edwards did that to Kelly, didn't he? So
he did exactly that.
There's a battle to look out for, guys.
It used to happen all the time to Lee Martin as well with us. But they need him in there. But they say he can be completely idiotic in some games, getting into scuffles, giving away silly fouls. A lot of the yellow cards are for things like mouthing off at referees, kicking the ball away. Yeah. They said at least get a yellow for a safe reducer on a lively winger. They said you've got to get a yellow, get one for something useful. Exactly.
Damn right.
So he does frustrate them, but he does balance the quartet at the back. The plan B, who I don't think would see a quick one-liner, Sadianko, ex Celtic and Saint Etienne. He's a 23-year-old. I think he is really a plan B. He's more of a right back, but he doesn't give much of an overlapping threat, even though he looks solid defensively. It's a high praise in a strange way. He's aware of his limitations, so he keeps it simple. But the back four, I think you can the back five you can actually name. As I say, will be Milosevic, Ben Alayoun, Robinson, and Dariqua, and Pantilimon in goal. He seems to be sticking. He's sticking to a back four consistently. O'Neill. Midfield is interesting. Where have we got Dave? As I say, depends how he sets them up. Look at the holding midfielders first and work our way forward, if that's okay, Rich. Yeah.
So it was. I remember on the preview show we were suspecting that they might bring in Guediora against us, which is exactly what they did. Does he feature at all, or presumably Colback's the ever-present, isn't he? We all know about Colback.
Absolutely.
But Guediora, has he disappeared out of?
He's a fringe player, but he does get used. There's a couple. The most holding of all the holding midfielders is probably Ben Watson.
Okay. We all know ex-Watford and
Reading. And Wigan.
Sorry.
That's Palace as well. He's 33. Some of these guys, Goodyear as well, he's 33. They are pushing on a bit. I think O'Neill trusts them. I really do. O'Neill likes a midfielder solidly in front of his back four. This is why Watson plays a lot. You feel as if I was thinking about this. Is this something about Republic of Ireland managers? You had Jack Charlton, you have Martin O'Neill, you have Mick McCarthy, and when I was going through this, thinking, well, that's what Mick would have done. That's what Mick would have done. It must be something to do with managing Ireland that does this to people. I don't know, because again, it's a solid.
I love the stalwart midfielders.
And Watson is excuse. Watson excuse for them. He really is. He's a tidy player, but he doesn't offer a lot going forward. He's an expert at positioning himself to intercept the ball. He can play a good forward pass, just like Skuse again. He can pick out every so often. He'll spot a good long range pass, so he can do that. But he is trusted by his manager. Guediora is slightly different. He's a holding midfielder. He can be box to box, but he's different to what's more static. Guediora, more all action, more combative, always looking to make things happen. He does therefore give the ball away a bit more because he takes more risks. But he's not a play it safe player. They talk about the sideways pass brigade. Watson and Colback would be sideways pass brigade merchants. Right. They'll recycle the ball and do it that way. Whereas Guardiola will kind of go, no, let's see if we can force something here, if he can do it. They love him because of his energy, his power, and his drive. Though nobody else has that. But he is inconsistent now. And they said he has good games, but when things aren't working, literally everything can go wrong. The age thing, they said there's a short circuit between his brain and his feet these days. You can see what he's trying to do, but he isn't always able to do it. So
one name that I would expect Keane and Martin O'Neill to like is Claudio Jakob. Is he injured or out of favour or gone?
He's fallen out of favour, and that is a head scratcher. He just seems to have fallen down the order when you've got so many other central midfielders in there. And they were very surprised he didn't play. So the Villa game would have been perfect for a streetwise midfielder. Now, whether he's lost pace, whether he's lost they don't know themselves what's happened there. Whether it's something,
pitch or something.
Claudio Jakob and Roy Keane in the dressing room together would be fun. Jakob, we talked about him, I should say, back before Christmas, and he was old school Argentinian.
Yeah, they were big fans of when they
streetwise.
They appreciated that he was a bit of a shithouse, if one of a nice phrase.
Exactly. Yeah, what's he done? I'm just looking at his appearance rate. Actually, he's had.
He's only got 3 bookings, so he can't have played too many.
He's had 1 bench appearance, which was 6 games ago against West Brom.
Okay,
his old team. Yeah. His old team. He came off the bench against them. That's all. He's 31, so he's not that old. Yeah. So, it could be that they're not short of options. They're overloaded, if anything, in central midfield, and they've also got somebody called Pele playing for them.
Okay.
Well, you can go with Jadilson Mamadou Tunkara Gomez if you prefer, but I'd prefer to go with Pele if that's all right.
Yeah, let's do that one.
I remember looking this up and thinking, "Ooh, Pele! This is it's a hell of a thing to take on as a nickname." I wouldn't go there myself. You really are backing yourself when you do that because everyone's going to compare you to him. So I looked up his CV. He was on the books of Genoa, Milan, and Benfica. Ooh, that looks really good. But he has
0 appearance for each, presumably.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
You're getting it now. He did play for Rio Aves and Belenenses, who are kind of decent Portuguese team level players, and that's his background, really. He's 27. He's had 2 games, and the first one was against Hull, where they were more or less in control of the game. He was calm. That's the thing they like about him. He was calm. He did the simple stuff well. He's strong, has a good pass, doesn't panic. This guy was really nice. He'd been sold in, touted to them as a box-to-box midfielder, but they see him as a holder from the way he was playing. Calm, agile and strong, winning the ball, bossing the midfield, spreading the game well, popping up in all the right places, everything you'd expect. So he was in instead of Watson. He was in the sitting role. So that was fine against Hull. Then he played against Aston Villa. And things got interesting. Against Villa, he was too slow at reading balls. He looked scared and stood doing nothing. He was way off the pace and seemed to turn into Villa players every time. He took ages on the ball. He didn't have time and space to dominate as he did against Hull. One of them said it was the difficult second album. Basically, against Hull, he was fine. You put him up against Josh McGinn and Jack Grealish.
Yeah, proper midfielders, aren't they?
And you're right when you talk about Claudio Jakob. You should, was it right to put this guy in there for his second game? That was you'd ask the question really because Villa are, as I say, they are so feisty at the moment. But he may well start against us. The other issue was tiredness because again, having made a first start against Hull on Saturday, then 4 days later against Villa into that whirlwind, tiredness may have played a factor in it. But keep an eye out for him. If he gets time and space on the ball, he's calm. He can regulate play. He's not a panicker. He's a bit like the centre backs. Actually, he's somebody who can settle the rhythm of the team down quite nicely, which is always a good thing in a holding midfielder.
I was going to query. So his name's Pele, yeah.
Pele.
Right. So he brings some stiffness to the midfield. Would you say?
Yeah.
That's a really subtle joke there, Harry, on Pele's. What he currently gets up to these days, advertising certain medications, but I'll leave that one there. If you don't know about that, I won't explain it.
I'm naive. I'm very naive.
I'll tell you when we stop recording.
Okay.
The fact I've had to explain it probably kills it, but never mind.
Probably kills it, but
and he was a little bit flaccid, you reckon, against Villa.
Against Hull, he was out of his depth. He really was. Against Hull, he was fine against Hull, but exactly.
Villa, flaccid. I'll explain it afterwards. I'm really happy with both these lines. So if you know what I'm talking about on the pod, please give me a tweet and let me know that I'm not barking up the wrong tree. Where should we go next, Harry? Let's move it on.
Let's move on. Moving on. Let's look at the two because when they do play a diamond, or if they play three in midfield, Ryan Yates will tend to play on the right side of the central midfield. Jack Colback will bias more slightly towards the left. And let's do Yates first, and then we'll do Colback.
Yeah, is he a youth product? It's not a name that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, on loan last season at Scunthorpe, he's one that's broken through. He certainly isn't a connoisseur of the passing game. He could fit right in then. He struggled to compete with. Again, he was the one who should have been over helping Doriqua, but he wasn't. His main strengths are without the ball. His technique isn't high, and he's not a passer. But running, determination, hassling opponents. He's a terrier, basically. Even though he's not small. But that's what he does. Breaking up play is what he does best. He also has a knack of timing his runs into the box well. There's kind of touch of Flynn Downs about him, I guess, in that sense. Though I think Flynn is actually not all that bad with the ball. But the thing that always caught my eye immediately when I saw Downs play was his feistiness, his willing to get in, disrupt, break up play, and then recycle the ball forward insofar as he could. But I think Yates could be similar to Downs, but not as good with the ball, if I could put it like that. One criticism of Yates, which does come up, there's a bit of gamesmanship goes on with him, diving and sneaky handballs, and the Forest fans hate him for it.
Oh, okay.
He will drift out wide, and he can be a useful cross-field outball for one of the left-sided players, Osborne or Robinson, so he can do that. But he wins challenges, wins headers inside and outside the box. That's what he is. He's a more destructive player, if I can put it politely. Whereas Colback, he is Mr. Consistency. That's how they describe him. He rarely seems to dip in quality. He never makes mistakes. Quietly goes about his business, making the easy pass, moving into space to get it back. There is in a way, a style of play that hasn't really changed, even going back to our time in a way.
I loved Colback for us. I was really hoping that we might try to sign him, actually.
Yeah,
because I don't think he was anywhere. Was he at Sunderland rather than he went to Newcastle?
He was at Sunderland at the time. He's on loan from Newcastle, having been on loan. But the plan is, I think the expectation is it's going to be a permanent signing. They want to make him captain, basically. That would be the next season. That would be the hope. Of course, he's played for Keane before. No, he's one of those players that again, you miss him if he's not there. Brilliant at nicking the ball from opponents. You can't fault his work rate, tackling, or desire. They would like him to play more positive passes. That thing we were saying earlier about the sideways pass brigade when we were talking about Guadiora, it is an issue with Colback. I think they feel he has more in him. But his break-up play is top drawer. He makes a ton of important tackles. But they'd like him to be. They feel he has more in him, but he doesn't make mistakes. But that could be because he doesn't take risks. You could look at it that way too.
Still quite dirty though.
Yeah,
13 bookings.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. He's a superb midfielder. They feel he's somebody who requires more dynamism and athleticism around him. And the killer quote was, "When Colback is being dominated by John McGinn, you know you're up against it." So one of the things Villa did against them was to.
All of our players to be dominated, Colback, you don't expect.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. And also, did Villa obviously do a job? Decide, right? Let's look. If we kill Colback, that wrecks their midfield because he's their reference point, and therefore they obviously did a specific job on him. So it's fascinating. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. He'll probably go with a midfield three. He generally hasn't played two up front, apart from when he tried the diamond against Stoke, and that didn't work. That they lost that 2-0. But and it really didn't work. There was no rhythm to it. So I'd say three midfielders would be the likelihood. A callback would be one, and then you could have Pele, you could have or Watson, you could have or Guadiora. I'd say Colback and Yates would be the most likely to feature, plus one other. The most creative of the midfielders, and you could almost say he's a borderline striker, is Carvalho. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I remember Carvalho and Lolly, us talking a lot about. You were quite worried about Lolly last time, I remember.
I was, yeah.
Carvalho, he's kind of. He's not had the same season that I was expecting him to have as who's the Wolves midfielder? Neves. Was such a critical player for Wolves last season, and I was expecting Carvalho to be in the same mould, but I've not really heard too much about him this season. Is he still finding his feet?
It could be that he's struggling.
He's contributing. He scored a lot. Is he scoring against Hull?
Yeah, he is. No, he has been effective enough, but I think he's got the burden of this £13 million price tag hanging over him. Plus the fact that he's there's a few things. He's the whole the thing about if you're a Portuguese player going into Wolves or comfortable with that model of play, the whole thing is set up for you. He's been dropped into a setup that is nowhere near as polished. So the circumstances in which he's landed, it's not dripping with technical Portuguese style players who'll be able to do what he wants. So he's having to work with
a manager like Espirito Santo.
You've got Karanka and O'Neill, and one of the things that one of them has said bluntly, he isn't suited to O'Neill's football. They said one of the first phrase they kicked off was we've done the Carvalho debate to death. So that gives you an idea of he's one of those, every club has one. There's a player who gets
there's a player there.
Yeah, and it's just everybody just drives everybody mad. They do say they need creativity. They don't have much in this team, and this lad has it in spades. Work rate gets you so far, but you need to have quality on the end of it, and he can give them the quality. There was a lovely phrase they described him. One of them said he glides around the pitch with inconspicuous malice. I like that. That's a very elegant way of describing it. No, that's a compliment. It is. It's inconspicuous. So there, he just moves around the field and then bang. And then he'll kill you.
Suddenly, okay.
Yeah, it's no, that was a nice one. They say he's a bit fair weather though. But again, you can see them splitting opinion. He's exactly the type of player we should enjoy watching. He was okay against Villa. He opened the door, but the game really passed him by because, again, as I said earlier, when you had him and Lolly playing up front, they're both players who want the ball on the ground. Carvalho is the passer, Lolly is the dribbler. That's the best way to describe it, to split the two in simple terms. And they're not quite sure where Carvalho fits in, but that comes back to the owners. Why would you sign a player like that?
It's almost a statement of intent, isn't it, that signing?
It's
build a team.
Is it a trophy? Yeah.
Trophy signing, yeah, great. Exactly my thought, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you wonder. That's what you really do. But we'll see with Carvalho. If he starts along with Ansarifard, they will be playing. They will be going for some sort of technical style of model of play, I would have thought. If not, if he comes on, the other thing he could if you're sitting on the bench, don't be surprised if they come on and switch the model of play after half an hour. It'll be interesting to see what he does. Lolly, meanwhile, we'll talk about him because he's more of kind of an out-and-out winger, I suppose you could say, on the right. They love him. 2 good feet, bags of pace, the confidence to take anyone on, the best dribbler in the division. He goes past players. Well, he goes past people like I go past the salad at a buffet. That was quite nice. But the thing I love him about he's almost like a tricky winger in rugby terms as well. Every single time he gets the ball, he's a threat. He's simple yet clever with the ball, using small body movements to shift inside and out and then race away. The problem they've had, though, is because of the lack of creativity, teams have been doubling and tripling up on him. So therefore, if you shut down Lolly, you've pretty much shut down 2/3 of the attacking threat that they've got because he's the one provider that they have got. But he does relieve pressure, he does shape the game, and he's very unselfish. But his close control is the thing. But they always say they're too reliant on him coming up with a bit of magic.
Is there an understanding between
I think the other player who is out injured as well is Matt. It's beg your pardon?
I was just sorry. Is that a pairing there, Carvalho and Lolly? Do they work off each other well, or different ends of
they do. There isn't a strong bond between the two of them. They do link up play quite well, but obviously it didn't happen against Villa. The real natural partner is Matty Cash, who is out injured at the moment. He's a 21-year-old winger. So ideally, you'll have Lolly on the right, Cash on the left, and the two wingers balance each other up, so they don't actually have a net winger on that side. So no, there isn't a strong connection between. As I say, in theory there should be because of the way Carvalho plays. They should be reading each other's games a lot better. But what they have been doing instead is playing Ben Osborne on the left. Now Osborne, he switched into left back when Jack Robinson was suspended.
Yeah, so he played there last night, didn't he? On Wednesday.
He did. Oh, he did on Wednesday. That's absolutely. He played on Wednesday night against Villa. He suffers from being versatile, is how I describe it. He's pretty effective. Yeah, he's a solid left-sided player. He can play as a winger, which is what he normally will. And I'd be surprised if you don't see with Robinson back, Osborne. It could well be that Osborne then goes back up. They go with a 4-3-3. You've got Osborne on one side. You've got Lolly on the right. You've got a playmaker possibly in behind a lone striker. That could be how they set it up. But Osborne, he was in space all game against Hull. He looked after Jared Bowen. They were full of press for him. He had Jared Bowen in his pocket, they said, all evening, which was quite good. He does get targeted in a defensive role because he's not physically very big, but he doesn't shirk a challenge and carries on wanting the ball and wanting to play. but he struggled against Villa again. This is what I was saying, going back to what I said earlier about quality. He was nowhere to be found for Villa's first goal. He did go missing, and if you look at the highlights, you can see that very clearly. Several times he passed to a Villa player under no pressure. Once again, even though they say he was under no pressure, he may not immediately have had the ball, but he may not have had options to be able to take the ball forward.
Yeah, and in an unfamiliar position, I mean, you got to expect, haven't you?
He's a tidy winger. He's tidy on the left, effective 1-2s, closes down space quickly off the ball. So he's a perfectly decent championship player, but he doesn't have the threat that Lolly does, I suppose. The other plan B, which I'll touch on for 30 seconds, really, is Diogo Gonçalves, who is another winger who is who's really peripheral. Little awareness of what's going on around him. No end product lightweight. I think they had him on loan from Benfica with an option to buy. My sense is he's going back to Portugal. He likes to run with the ball, likes to run in behind players off the ball too. There's something there, but he hasn't been given a run of games. They don't trust him. He's happy to get the ball and run at people, but but he gets knocked off the ball too easily. He's been Karanka and O'Neill haven't trusted him basically. So that's building up to the strikers, and the three up front. There's two names we do know, two names we don't know. Of the two we do, Lewis Graben is very doubtful for the game. He picked up an Achilles injury and he hasn't featured for about 3 or 4 games now. He is on the way back, but I'm not sure he'll be ready for Portman Road. So that's one scourge we don't have to worry about. But one friendlier returnee will be Daryl Murphy. We've got him.
He's bound to score, isn't he? I'm going to get your money on it. Actually, don't.
He hasn't. I'm not sure. Bear in mind, though, Rich, he's 35. Age is catching up with him. There is a feeling that O'Neill has a soft spot for him, but it's not only does he no longer have pace. One of them said his inability to control a ball when it's passed is unmatched. One of them said they swear he has a force field up, and it's the only way they can rationalise why every ball will bounce straight off him. He lacks. If your striker is standing still or walking for 90% of the game, you will struggle to create. He just lacks mobility.
It's a shame,
that said, when they beat the Rams a few weeks ago in the East Midlands Derby, he was pivotal in the win. He's very good at softening up defenders for an hour before the creative ones appear. That seems to be the best way to use him. Hasn't changed his professionalism, works as hard as ever. But he doesn't have the quality. He's 35, and you might be able to wear that as a keeper or as a centre back. But at this age now, I think it is catching up with him. But you might see him start. But Karim Ansarifard's an interesting one because he was an Iranian international. There was a work permit problem, so they only signed him in November from Olympiacos. And they describe him. He's got mobility and running. He highlights Murphy's immobility is how they describe him. He scored against Hull, I think that was his first goal. It's taken him 4 months to score, and it's taken him time to get up to the pace of the England game. Good movement, good desire, but can they trust him for a full 90 minutes? You see, the thing about Murphy, you can trust him, you know what you're going to get. But with Ansarifard, they're not sure. One aspect of English football culture he has not adjusted to is the fact that he seems more intent on hitting the floor than battling it out.
Okay. So, we'll come on to the referee.
Yeah, we will.
So that might have a... Yeah, sorry.
Bloody, I've just realised. Yes, I've just realised where that could lead us. He's not helping with those dives. That was pathetic. We might have an answer.
Time and a place.
Time and a place, exactly. Good movement, great ball control, but he needs support to create space. They tried again hoofing the ball up to him against Villa. High balls are a total waste. Yeah. And he was up against Tyrone Mings and got nothing out of Mings all game. They said Mings had him completely wrapped up.
And that doesn't surprise me because I think Mings is on a great run of form at the moment, playing really well for Villa.
Yeah. It's great to see, it really is. The final player, quick mention to Leo Bonatini. This is a classic example of a January signing who has struggled to get match fitness.
Right.
It really is. He's flashes of brilliance, but it hasn't fallen right. On loan from Wolves. He's just a loan signing. Brazilian player, part of their setup under Nuno. But came originally from Saudi Arabia, Al Hilal, the way the players move around the world. I think he's not a striker who necessarily wants to play up against centre-backs, but he's somebody who likes to break in behind. So you could see him and Ansarifard trying to provide some movement up front against, if O'Neill is looking at targeting Chambers and Enciala, that might be an option he does. But it tends to be nice touches, but only in glimpses. So there we go. Okay. So that's what they've got. As I say, normally you can say they're going to play this way or this way. With O'Neill, my assumption would be they'll try playing direct and then go with a more technical model, but they could just as easily not, because they ended up bringing Murphy on against Aston Villa as the switch up option, and everybody was going, well, what's that all about? There's no point, because but I could see why they did it, possibly as an outlet. But then the damage was done. Yeah,
but likely to be a one up front though. Yeah.
Likely to be a one up front. Unless he goes with the diamond, he won't. Which he hasn't played a back three yet. So yeah,
who knows? Harry, great stuff there.
Thank you. So it's fascinating.
Yeah. So there's a quickly bit of housekeeping we need to do. So for those watching on the video, the shirts behind me are 2 shirts where we've done the double over Forest. Can you imagine? We used to win at Forest. So we've got. We never. Well, yeah. So that is 92-93, the season where Forest went down, and actually, Roy Keane's last game for Forest was in a 2-1 defeat at Portman Road, the last game of the season, I think. So that's that shirt, and then we've got the promotion shirt 99-2000, where we beat them 2-0 away, I think, or 1-0. Matt Holland scored, and obviously we started the season off with a 3-1 win. Yeah, and all 3 strikers scored. Yeah. So some good memories there. Very quickly as well, because we've done Forest and we've talked a lot about Bristol City, but it's all good stuff. Let's quickly do Daryl's team, shall we?
Quickly, S&D. Let me whip it up on here. Interesting one this time. Loads of midfielders to play with. So Henderson and goal.
Yeah, he's given us 2 lineups actually. So we'll go with the top one.
Okay.
Yeah, I reckon we're lacking a right back, aren't we? But we'll do what Keane did, and we'll play a load of centre backs along the back 4, and hope that works. So
unless you could switch to a back 3, I suppose. That's the other thing. But he's got Tony Vaughan, Luke Chambers, Danny Collins, and Dan Harding across the back. Yeah, Danny Higginbotham is Plan B. Paul Gerrard is a backup goalkeeper as well. You could do. I suppose you could work a back 3, and then that would give you freedom to drop in, because you've got Anderson on the wing and Lee Martin on the wing. Yeah, and
then bring in someone like Liam Trotter or Johnny Williams.
You could do. That would leave Lee Martin as a wing back. That might be interesting. But that's possible. But the midfield he's gone for is fascinating. Jack Colback and Franz Tyson.
I don't remember Franz Tyson's spell at Forest, but then I don't remember his spell at Ipswich because I wasn't born. But
I think that's where he went. He went there afterwards. Colback and Tyson would be interesting. You'd see Colback very much sitting there, I would have thought, whereas Tyson would be playing in behind. On the right wing, I should say, we've got Paul Anderson as well. So you've Anderson and Martin flanking. You've got Muzzy Carriol on the bench.
I was going to say I'd maybe be tempted to lob in Carriol, but maybe you'll only play half a game.
That's the danger. Yeah, so maybe he's a bench. You could switch him in.
And an honourable mention for Chris Bart-Williams as well, who I think is a pretty tidy midfielder. Plenty of striking options.
There's no shortage of options. Midfield, I have to mention Johnny Williams, who I love. He's in there. You've got Liam Trotter. Yeah, as I say, Bobby Howe, Danny Sonner. There's some good midfield pairings you could do. But Colback and Tyson, I can see why Daryl's gone for that. Up front.
Yeah, so the McCarthy pair. And we'll have the Ipswich Murphy. And he's also got McGoldrick. I'd have lobbed in David Johnson Mark II there.
Yeah.
But certainly not Adam Proudlock or Marlon Harewood.
No. Stern John was there as well. That was
Stern John's a good championship name as well.
I think Daryl's gone. I always thought certainly McGoldrick and Murphy in that first season was when he had his eye in. It was fantastic. It was really, really good
stuff. Thank you, Daryl. We will give that a retweet as well. Let's do some questions, shall we? So we've mentioned him already. Let's talk about Keith Stroud. Vinna Maipo. Keith Stroud is in charge this Saturday. This is scary. Are you scared? I'm scared.
We're all scared. And it was only when you said it we were talking about Ansarafat, the striker, and I was just thinking he dives very easily. And I'm going, oh God, no. You just now that you say it, and particularly if you've got Toto in the back line, you think, oh God, no. Please no. Let it not happen. Surely he must even things up, but you tend to, he won't do. He just won't do that, will he? Mm-hmm. No. The way my way of rationalising it is, it doesn't matter if he's in charge. If he goes down, or if we go down, I should say, we probably won't see him again, so we don't have to worry about him in that sense. So
until he gets kicked out of division for being crap.
Unless he's so bad that we get a really awful version of Keith Stroud in League One, in which case then you might as well have Guinevere on the field and just drawing out decisions or the magic 8-ball, deciding everything that's going on. No, I'm kind of with given where we are, I'm kind of. If we get Stroud, if we get Simpson, if we get any of the Dementors refereeing us, there's nothing we can do about it, really.
What I would say as well is that Alan Judge is good at playing the referees, isn't he? So maybe
He is actually, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll get
So that might work in our favour. That might work in our favour. Yeah.
Ian McIntyre, we've kind of alluded to this already, but I'll ask the question nonetheless. After the recent performances and results, how much more positive are you feeling? I think we just need a finisher. Agree?
The finisher is the big thing, yeah. That's. I mean, even Vince saw that. He said in every other aspect where we could be a comfortable mid-table team, well, I'd say probably lower mid-table, but I do think that the lack of a finisher is an issue. I think. Also, I think Chalobah, the way he's blossomed, has actually helped strengthen the defence as well. So in that sense, there's a better shape there. But no, I agree. That's a pressing need, certainly next year.
And again, Jack Barham asked a question that we've kind of discussed as well. Do you think Tuesday's team was an indication about next season?
Yeah, I do. It was interesting because it was also I think Harvey touched on a question about putting Wright on the bench along with the academy, with the two together, and there was only one loan signing in the team. That was Judge, who there's every possibility.
Well, Judge was a free signing, wasn't he? Chalobah.
He was. Chalobah was the loan.
Yeah, and Bree was on the bench.
Right. Yeah. Yes, no, yes, good point. Yeah, Bree was on the bench, but it was very much a team weighted. It was a glimpse of the future, I think. Yeah, I'd agree with that. The one thing I would say though is I think you have to be careful in terms of you can't go throwing that out every week, like against Sheffield United or Leeds or some of the more physical teams. You'd probably Bristol weren't a very physical side, so what we were able to put out with the bias towards the younger players, it was more under 23ish in terms of the shape of the game.
Sure.
But so probably against Bolton, who are struggling anyway, we could do a Reading like we did last season to them if their confidence isn't great, because our confidence is quite good. Or against a team like Brentford again, who aren't necessarily an out and out team of units. You could see, I think if you choose your games carefully, but I trust Lambert on that one. I would. Yeah,
good shout.
Yeah.
Barry kind of asked the flavour, just how bright is the future? He's excited and looking forward to the rebuild. Got to be positive, haven't we?
Yeah, no, it's a team that you could fall in love with. From what I saw on Tuesday, you could see it's playing with real personality. It's playing with there's a sense of style about it. There's a model of football. It's attractive to watch. We know the bits that we're missing, but if you put those in, you can see something coming together. And as Vince talked about, it does reflect Lambert's personality. There's a lovely style of play to it. Yeah, it's good.
Right. Our friend Amy Downs, who I met for the first time properly face to face before lovely. She was interviewed for the ITFC blogger. I've forgotten what it's called. Sorry. International break coming up. Is this a good thing for ITFC because it will give us a well-earned rest, or awful because it will cut into the momentum we've got at the moment with playing well? International break, good or bad thing? I mean, generally it's a bad thing, isn't it? I hate the international breaks, frankly. But, in terms of our momentum,
I don't know. One thing I'd say, I felt Bristol were definitely mentally and physically the wearier team on Tuesday night. That's one thing I would say. I don't know, it's a bit academic for me because we're in pre-season mode already. I think we've got a big 5-month pre-season, so I'm more sanguine about it this time around. If the teams generally who like it are the teams who've got problems, and at the moment we know what our problems are, but we're well into fixing them. So I don't know.
It might give us time to get Will Keane back if he's going to get fit. Perhaps that's the only positive I could think.
So therefore, you can have a proper look at him then, because you missed the whole game, which is next after Forest. So then he'll come back in afterwards and hopefully fully refreshed. So we can just again in pre-season mode, we can help assess our options. Yeah, but it's a real tongue twister. It really is. You just want it out of the way, or tongue twiddler, I should say. You're just whistling and waiting for it to pass.
Yep. Yeah. Harry Butcher, this is a debate that's often had when he's out of the team. Is our midfield better without Scouse in it? Or is it just different? I guess I would supplement it.
I'd say, a season ago, yes. Or no, I should say, we needed Scouse more accurately. I think it's a yes and no, actually. He would have been superfluous starting against Bristol City, but he added steel when we needed him near the end. Depends on who we're playing.
Yeah. So I think we've accepted the next season, perhaps starting from now into next season, the likes of him and maybe Chambers, when we've got strength and depth at the back, will drop out of the team. They will be maybe rotated a little bit.
Gently receding, but definitely with a role. But I think that's how I'd see it now. It's more circumstantial. 12 months ago, he was penciled in. And
the oppositions that we expect to dominate us, maybe it's a game for Scouse as well. Who knows? Maybe time and a place, Harry. I think on that one. Jack's Larder. Let me do a bit of context here. It's obviously the first time Roy Keane is back at Portman Road since he was sacked back in 2011. his question is, out of all of Keane's signings, who would you want in our current team? Also, will we hear Keane give us a wave? Did some stats on Keane, and 81 games in all competitions, a win percentage of 34.6%. Do we kind of... this is my question for you, Harry. Given what we know now about Evans, particularly early on, and Simon Clegg, would Keane do better now at Ipswich than when he joined us back in 2011? Is Evans a wiser, better owner, or was that always going to be a marriage made in hell?
Oh God, what a question! It was a mismatch. Definitely, it was a mismatch. Evans needs a manager with a lot of experience. I'm convinced of this now. You do not put him near a rookie in any shape or form. And Keane was still a relative rookie at the time, particularly with Clegg doing the negotiations. It just was. Oh, it was a car crash. It really was. And then we saw it again with Jewell, and then we saw it again with Hurst. I wouldn't have Keane near the club. I really wouldn't. He was arrogant. Don't get me started. His autobiography.
Read the book. Yeah, the second part.
It's not on my bookshelf. I don't want it near the shop. I don't want it near my. I've no time for it at all. The man was arrogant. He falls into, to me, Roy Keane fits into that group of players, very much the golden generation, a sense of entitlement, a sense of arrogance, a sense of believing that they were better than they actually were. And I as far as I'm concerned, he's a busted flush. Wow. And it's not just because of the comments he made about Ipswich. I just simply don't rate him at all. Yeah, there we go.
Wow. But would you have any of his signings in the team? Going back to the original question, Harry, I tried to list them out. I think I went for Jason Scotland because I think we need a physical striker, goal scorer. You've gone down the other end of the pitch.
I'd go for Damien Delaney. I love Delaney. I thought he was fantastic, and he was cruelly mismanaged by Keane as well. I just think, it's. No, I thought Delaney went on and proved just how good he was at Palace, didn't he? Which is fantastic. Briefly on Keane, Norwich, where did that come from? Nottingham Forest fans, I should say, Freudian slip, talked about. They've got a weird relationship with Keane. This needs to be aired. The Dark Lord motif. If they're frustrated with, if a Forest fan, nearly said it again, if a Forest fan is frustrated with Roy Keane, or frustrated with the player on the field, I should say, they assume that Roy Keane is the person who is going to go in and articulate their venom at that particular player. It comes up all the time. I hope Keane is getting stuck into them now for switching off at key moments. Cue the half-time Keane hairdresser. Keane needs to wake them up. Not O'Neill. Keane is the one who needs to wake them up. He's the purveyor of negative dressing room wrath. That's how I describe it. He really is. And I think that's really funny that the players have decided, or the fans have decided, oh God, I'm really annoyed with him, but I know Roy Keane is going to give him a right earful. I don't need to. It's taken care of already. It's really weird. Some of their other comments about him are very amusing, because you can read them two ways. They were saying he's honest, transparent, direct, and consistent with players. Positive qualities you'd want in a leader. Yeah, we can recognise that. He knows how to make a point quickly and memorably. Again, they're praising him when they say that. Okay. If you want a quick lift in standards at the club, Roy Keane's as good as any. To be fair, they do say that he does have a win at all cost mentality, which nobody's going to argue with. But one of the funniest ones was, it's a shame Henry Lansbury isn't here. I'd have walked to the ground to see that.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's a fit there, is there?
Oh God, that would be funny. The ultimate luxury midfielder, and then you put Keane in there. Oh my lord, who played the role?
I can't just imagine Keane giving him all evils rather than doing the hair dry treatment. But
I know exactly that.
To be a fly to wall, That would be good.
Yeah, one of them was hoping that he'll keep Jack Grealish honest with just a stare from the touchline. That didn't happen.
No, busted flush perhaps.
No, forgive me. I've got scant regard for Keane, though. I really do.
There you go. That's yes, a bit of a surprise, I would say. Mullet. My West Brom buddy Mullet. Is John Nolan a case study in what Lambert could do with Hurst's players, or merely another player who's had the odd good game in the worst season ITFC has known? Should we polish the turds we paid handsomely for, or cleanse the transfer toilet with a good flush? I think Nolan's improving, isn't he?
He is. I think Nolan's one of the exceptions. He's definitely growing in confidence, and he's understanding of his role under Lambert. Bear in mind, he's got the perfect manager.
Did he do the back heel flick for the goal to play in Penlock?
I think that was him, if memory serves me right.
I think it's getting better.
That happened so instantly We were at the ground. It was only when I went home and I saw that on the video that I realised that just how spectacular an own goal it was. But going back to Mullet's question, I think it's with all of these players, there's going to be a mixture of outcomes. I think that's true. For me, Jackson will always be a good impact substitute. I could be wrong on that, but with that pace he has, I can see him being really effective at that, even in League One, if we get a stronger striker to play in his stead. But Nolan, I think, is different. I think he is growing in confidence, and I say under Lambert, he is properly blossoming in it now. I think there was another question where somebody was mildly critical of him, and I just was sitting on halfway, and I had a good view of him, and he was really well balanced. He linked with the front three. He also knew when to take the ball forward to relieve pressure. Ben and I were chatting. There was one moment in the second half we'd broken out of midfield because they were coming at us late in the game, and Ben he said, come on, take the foul, and a Bristol player reacted, took the foul, and Nolan went down, won the free kick, relieved the pressure, and that was something that would not have happened back in October. It simply wouldn't have. So he's learning how to play championship football as a midfielder. So no, I think, but I'm not sure about them all, but I certainly think that's the case with Nolan. I think Lambert has seen something there he can work with.
Yeah, and I think Edwards is growing into the season as well. I thought he was good on Tuesday, and he was good on Saturday. NCR and Jackson, as you say, probably bench options, I guess. Andy Grimes, you talked about this briefly. What are your thoughts on Dazelle? I don't think he has the pace, mobility, or physicality required for the modern game at this level. Saying that, I don't think we have many better players with the ball at their feet. Thought about whether Dazelle has the pace or physicality and the mobility point, because I think we both agree that there's a clever footballer in there, there's a passer of the ball in there. Does he need the pace and mobility and physicality in League One, do you think?
He does need, I think he'll certainly need more physicality, but I think you just put him in with the right players. You have other players who can do that for you. You know, and the midfielders to me is the microcosm of the team, and if you get the right balance in there, you don't. Dazelle, I wouldn't want him to. You can overtrain. You can become over muscular. You can lose your center of gravity. Some players they get criticised for that. The game is much more about upper body strength these days. I know that, but I think with the right players in there protecting him, either having a good. You could play him with an out-and-out playmaker in front of him. You could play him with Bishop's runs to create spaces for him to attack. You could play him with a player like Chalobah who's got athleticism and physicality. The three that worked against Bristol worked really effectively. But I don't think he needs to be all of those things, because what he does give you is that eye for a pass. He is a proper locksmith, and he could turn into, I don't know whether Lambert is seeing him as a Wes Hoolahan, but you could see him ultimately becoming that in time, because he can see the spaces before they happen. He really does. But I wouldn't expect him to have to. There's only so much he can add to. He can't. He doesn't necessarily have to have all of the kit in the bag, because you've got other midfielders who can balance that with him.
Agree with that. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Arthur Pickthorne, is the silver lining to being so bad all season that we can now just play without pressure to win? We can get far more out of the remaining games than if we were scrapping away. This extra time to prepare could make a huge difference. Thought on that, Harry?
No, yeah, it is a silver lining. We've got 5 months to plan, and both Lambert and the club, I think, see it that way. They can never admit it. But even this week's results, I think, were another killer. For any slim hope we had. Whap! No, you're not having any of that. I think Rotherham won. Who else? It was anybody who could have won did win, kind of thing. To kind of stretch the gap now to 13 points or something. Yeah. You always look at the points versus games played, and if the difference is less than the number of games left to play, it's kind of slightly in your favour. But now we're at the point where we've got 8 games left to play, is it? And we've got a 13-point difference, which is that's proper daylight, I'm afraid. So,
yeah.
No, we're in pre-season.
Speaking of, Beanie asks at this point, what will be the instant reaction to the dreaded R next to us on the league table?
Yeah.
Or will there not be one?
It will be a low weekend. I'm not looking forward to it. No, it will happen, and it's going to hit, no question. It's not going to be a happy time. But the one positive is that we won't have Sky cameras looking for glum faces, because we've all priced it in now. This is the real positive, because you think to yourself, they're going to be coming along looking for an Ipswich fan crying. We're not crying. We've accepted what's happening. We're now planning for next season. We've gone through that, and that's what I'd say to any town fans. So if there are any, what I'd love is for Sky to rock up at a game, expecting us to go down, even if we get a draw. Say we get another draw against, say, it's Birmingham or whoever further down the track, and they turn up expecting us all to be standing there looking glum and have bed sheets out, and then they suddenly see that there's a mosh pit and we're all rocking and there's a great big party going on. Explain that one to your readers, or explain that one to your listeners.
Exactly right.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think Sky called that out. The Sky called it out, certainly Bristol City, actually, I think, and because Darren Bent was the pundit, and you get a pretty basic analysis from Darren Bent. Liam Rossina was actually pretty good, but all of them, even David Prutton, acknowledged that the Ipswich fans, the atmospheres and people... people's views of the club have actually improved, and I think the media starting to pick up on that now a little bit. But you're quite right; it would be great if the reaction to the R is we're up for next season. Bring it on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. We're already planning. Yeah,
we've got a few more questions, but I think let's end on a positive, Harry, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the positive being making the silver lining out of the cloud that is a relegation against us on the league table. So we'll end it on there. Thank you for everyone else for the questions. Sorry, do we have time on those? Harry, do you want to give us your plugs? Where can we find your blog and your Twitter?
Yep. Blog goes up tomorrow, or Friday lunchtime, I should say, on TWTD, and it can be found at Harry from Bath on Twitter.
Brilliant stuff. You can find the channel at Blue Monday ITFC, and we'll obviously retweet all of Harry's stuff as well. You can find me at Ipswich, and I shall be back for the flagship show again. I need to have a break, Harry. I'm on this too much. I'll be hosting with Dave and Stat. So the This Week in ITFC History guys will be the main guys analysing Forest, and whatever happens there, a 1-1 draw. You heard it here first. Yeah. Thanks again, Harry, for your hard work. That was really good stuff.
All the best. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great weekend.